You may be thinking, what does an airplane, a light bulb, a granola bar, and a Nike shoe have to do with each other? Well, respectively, they represent transportation, electricity, food production, and large businesses and industries. All of these are dependent on fossil fuels. As the worldly and domestic sources of oil are drying up, people are starting to recognize the severe environmental consequences as well as impracticality of using fossil fuels for energy. In terms of electricity, within the past several years there has been a jumpstart in the search for renewable energy sources, such as solar power, biomass, geothermal, and especially wind power. Lester Brown, the president of the Earth Policy Institute, has created an ambitious plan to stabilize the climate and save civilization by 2020. In his ideal plan, by 2020, to satisfy 40% of world electricity needs, 1.5 million wind turbines of 2 megawatts each will need to be installed. The question is, should wind turbines really be part of the solution at all? This new jumpstart in the wind turbine industry mostly began in Europe, in countries such as Denmark, Spain, and Germany, and has quickly spread to other European countries and countries around the world. According to Eric Rosenblum, though, a famous science editor, writer, and critic of wind power, after leading the revolution in the wind power industry, now many European countries, such as the ones I just named, are either making less wind turbines than originally planned or stopping developments altogether. Motives for reducing or canceling production range from problems with government subsidies to wind unreliability to high upfront costs for the government and the taxpayers. These problems that I mentioned in Europe may have been caused by many companies and politicians jumping on the bandwagon, so to say, of renewable energy, looking to make some green and take advantage of customers looking to go green. This is dangerous because the companies are not actually considering the consequences of their actions. They did not care whether or not the wind turbines would be the appropriate renewable energy resource for their area. Rather, the ideas that the wind turbine represents were more important to the companies or the politicians than actually finding successful and meaningful ways to go green with energy. This picture displays the horrendous destruction of a mountaintop due to mining for coal that will later be burned to generate electricity. We all know this is horrible, but wind turbines would help decrease this occurrence, right? Well, as I explained in the last slide, many towns and politicians are eager to have the green image of a wind turbine. However, many people don't want it in their backyard, and with the need for unoccupied space by humans, some cities have placed turbines right in fragile habitats, disrupting many non-human species. This especially is ironic, since wind turbines are trying to replace the practice of mining of coal for electricity, but they're still damaging environments. Building an unoccupied space also requires building roads that lead to the site, which disrupts even more of the natural environment. One solution to the lack of space available for wind turbines on land can be found in offshore wind power. As Lester Brown mentions, there are already several projects in Spain and even on the east coast of the United States that focus on installing wind turbines in shallow areas of the ocean near the coast. It is interesting to note that many people were concerned about the welfare of birds and other wildlife when wind turbines were being installed on land. The question of whether or not offshore wind turbines are detrimental to surrounding aquatic ecosystems, however, remains unanswered. Yet another solution to the problem of lack of space is the idea of installing wind turbines in farmland. Adding the new industry of wind power can help spur suffering rural economies. As Lester Brown points out, farmers can continue to grow their crops while also making money from the electricity generated from the wind turbines. Many people also say that the wind industry is full of new job opportunities. However, this is not true. According to Eric Rosenblum, after the construction is finished, which are only temporary jobs, only one maintenance worker is needed. Specifically, Lester Brown points to the abandoned car plants in Michigan that could be revamped to employ workers that would construct new wind turbines on the existing assembly lines. However, what happens to these jobs when wind turbines no longer need to be produced? Despite these problems with employment and space, some governments eagerly require utility companies to install wind turbines in order to create electricity at a lower cost and therefore save money. Unfortunately, problems arise when the wind turbines do not work at optimum levels. This was the case for a wind turbine farm in England, where the use of wind power to generate electricity started costing the utility companies more than using their normal process. This is similar to pouring money into a sinking boat because they had to spend more money just to keep the wind farm running. The fact that wind conditions are not always perfect in the real world is largely overlooked when people promote the wind industry. Another little known fact is that wind turbines do need to take in some electricity to operate normally. They are not run solely by wind. In the future, though, maybe wind turbines will be installed in the best locations possible to increase their efficiency. Efficiency can also be improved with better technology, which might become available as the wind industry matures. Wind turbines may be a solution for decreasing our dependency on fossil fuels for the generation of electricity, but we also need to decrease our dependency on and consumption of electricity itself. We cannot simply rely on technology to solve all of our problems, and as Derek Jensen repeatedly mentions in his book, What We Leave Behind, our culture is killing the planet. Therefore, we need to change the way our culture works and the way people think as well. When people think of renewable energy, many might think they have a right to use more of it because it's not as harmful to the environment. These kinds of philosophies are unsustainable in the long run. Maybe people need to simply use less electricity, and we won't have to build as many wind turbines to begin with. Being sustainable might mean we have to accept a lower quality of life so that everyone can have the quality of life we deserve. One larger problem is that as developing countries continue to increase their technology and their standards of living, the consumption and therefore demand of electricity will also increase. And this map showing how electricity lights up the world will become brighter in areas such as Africa and Asia and many other countries. One question that arises from this is, how will these developing countries generate their electricity? According to Lester Brown, some states and some Canadian provinces plan on selling their excess electricity generated by wind turbines to other nations. This could become problematic. Already it is clear that wind power has become a powerful industry. Industries that become powerful sometimes forget about their consumers and the environment and become consumed in the race for profit and the treadmill of production. Renewable energy should be made available to all nations, and the selling of electricity would create a disadvantage for poorer countries. The idea of exporting power would only reinforce the large gap between rich and poor nations. Instead of exporting the excess energy created, efforts should be made to help poor nations reap the benefits of their own local energy source, which in turn can help their economy, but more importantly the environment, by eliminating the need to transport energy around the world. Wind energy may be a step in the right direction, but it will be a wasted effort if the idea of industry becomes more important than the equal right people have to develop wind power. So, are wind turbines the answer to the question of how we will transition to a fossil fuel-free energy economy? One thing for certain is that this question must be answered soon. Changing our energy infrastructure is going to be difficult, but it must be done in order to save ourselves and the environment. Right now, when the larger energy infrastructure is not completely environmentally sustainable, we cannot expect the wind turbine industry to be sustainable. It would be like trying to fit a square peg into a round, narrow hole. Furthermore, as the consequences of global climate change become more apparent, we do not have time to wait until the infrastructures of society become sustainable to make an impact, or rather decrease our impact.